when diplomatic envoy Zek'tai visits Earth's premier museum expecting to find primitive human artifacts, he discovers something impossible, a sword carbon-dated to be older than the galaxy itself. The human curator Bob Jenkins casually mentions it's from his high school graduation. What follows is a mind-bending revelation about humanity's true origins, their forgotten interstellar empire, and why they've been playing cosmic hide-and-seek for millennia. Told from Zek'tai's increasingly bewildered perspective, this comedic tale exposes humanity's ultimate practical joke on the universe. Zek'tai adjusted his diplomatic sash for the third time, trying to ignore the uncomfortable weight of his ceremonial breathing apparatus. The Terran atmosphere was tolerable, but protocol demanded he wear the full regalia of a Galactic Council envoy. After all, this was supposed to be a routine cultural exchange visit to observe the quaint artifacts of humanity's brief civilization. The human structure before him was impressive enough, he supposed. The Smithsonian Museum of Natural History stretched across several acres of their capital city, its stone facade weathered but sturdy, primitive masonry work but functional. He'd seen similar constructions on a dozen worlds where species had recently discovered fire and basic tool-making. "Welcome to the museum," chirped a cheerful human female at the entrance. She wore a bright blue vest with a name tag reading Martha, and spoke in that peculiar rapid-fire manner that humans seem to favor. "First time visiting Earth?" "Indeed," Zek'tai replied, his translator device rendering his formal galactic standard into passable English. "I am Envoy Zek'tai of the Andromedan Trade Collective. I have come to study your species' cultural development." Martha's smile widened impossibly. "Oh, wonderful. You'll love the ancient civilization's wing. Bob's working that section today. He's been here forever. Knows everything about the old stuff." Zek'tai nodded politely and proceeded into the main hall, expecting to find stone tools, perhaps some crude metalwork, maybe evidence of early agriculture. What he found instead made his secondary heart skip several beats. The first display case contained what appeared to be a crystalline computing matrix, its internal structure so complex that his trained xenoarchaeologist eye couldn't begin to parse its function. The placard beneath it read, in cheerful Comic Sans font, "Really old calculator, probably from Dave's college dorm, circa 2.3 million BCE, still works if you hit it right." Zek'tai blinked, all four of his eyes in rapid succession. That date had to be a translation error. Humans had only achieved spaceflight 300 years ago, according to every historical record in the Galactic database. He moved to the next case, which housed what looked suspiciously like a quantum resonance chamber, the kind of technology that his own species had only mastered within the last millennium. The sign read, "Mum's old kitchen gadget. Not sure what it does, but it makes great coffee. Warning, do not touch the glowy bits." Fascinating collection, isn't it? Zek'tai spun around to find an elderly human approaching, his white hair wild and unkempt, wearing a wrinkled cardigan that had seen better decades. The man's name tag identified him as Bob Jenkins, senior curator. "These artifacts," Zek'tai stammered, gesturing at the impossible displays surrounding them. "The dating cannot be correct. Your species has only recently achieved interstellar capability." Bob chuckled, a sound like grinding gears mixed with genuine amusement. "Oh, you're looking at the labels? Yeah, Martha keeps telling us to be more professional about those. But honestly, who's going to read them anyway?" He shrugged with the casual indifference of someone discussing the weather. They walked deeper into the museum, Zek'tai's scientific instruments beginning to emit increasingly urgent beeping sounds. His temporal scanner was showing readings that simply couldn't exist. His molecular analyzer had given up entirely and was now displaying what appeared to be profanity in 17 different languages. "Now this," Bob said, stopping before a wall-mounted display that made Zek'tai's knees go weak, "this is one of my personal favorites." The sword hung innocuously behind standard museum glass, its blade catching the fluorescent lighting in ways that seemed to bend physics. It looked old. Not just old in the way that ancient things look, weathered and worn, but old in a way that suggested it had watched stars being born and die. The metal seemed to shimmer with contained energy, and Zek'tai's enhanced vision could detect microscopic inscriptions that appeared to shift and change as he watched. His quantum dating device, the most advanced temporal analysis tool in known space, promptly exploded. Literally exploded. Small pieces of smoking metal scattered across the polished museum floor while Bob watched with mild interest. "Oh, those things do that sometimes around the older exhibits," Bob said conversationally, as if alien technology spontaneously combusting was a minor inconvenience, like a clogged drain. We've got a whole collection of busted scanners in the back room. The insurance company stopped returning our calls. Zek'tai stared at the smoking remains of his equipment, then at the sword, then at Bob's utterly unconcerned expression. What does the placard say about this particular artifact? Bob glanced at the small sign beneath the display and scratched his head. Oh, that old thing? Says here it's from my high school graduation, Central High, class of 847 3092 BCE. Good times. He smiled fondly at the memory, as if recalling a pleasant summer vacation, rather than an impossibility that predated the formation of their galaxy. The last coherent thought Zek'tai managed before his worldview began its spectacular collapse was wondering if human education systems were far more comprehensive than previously assumed. Zek'tai's breathing apparatus began making small whimpering sounds, which he realized with some embarrassment were coming from him rather than the device. He stared at Bob Jenkins, this seemingly harmless elderly human, trying to process what he'd just heard. Your high school graduation. Zek'tai's voice cracked like an adolescent's. Did you perhaps misspeak? Maybe you meant 1847 or 1992. Bob squinted at the placard, then pulled out a pair of reading glasses that looked suspiciously like they were carved from compressed starlight. Nope, 847 392 BCE. Though to be fair, we were still using the old calendar system back then. Had to convert it when the Galactic standard kicked in. He chuckled. You know how it is with bureaucracy. No, Zek'tai most certainly did not know how it was. What he knew was that 847 3092 BCE predated the formation of his own solar system by several 100,000 years. His species' most ancient legends spoke of the mythical First Ones, the theoretical elder race that had supposedly seeded the galaxy with life before vanishing into cosmic history. Those were myths, stories told to explain the impossible similarities between distant species. Bob, Zek'tai said carefully, the way one might address a potentially unstable explosive device. That date you mentioned, it's older than most star systems. Is it? Bob looked genuinely surprised. Huh. Time flies when you're having fun, I guess. He started walking toward another section, gesturing for Zek'tai to follow. Come on, let me show you some of the family photos. Martha's always saying we need more personal touches in the exhibits. They paused at what appeared to be a normal bulletin board, the kind found in break rooms across the galaxy, except the photos pinned to it showed Bob, looking remarkably unchanged, standing in front of landmarks that should have been geologically impossible. This one's from the company picnic, Bob said, pointing to a faded photograph showing him sharing what looked like a sandwich with a creature that resembled a cross between a dinosaur and a food processor. Back when Pangaea was still in one piece. Good barbecue weather that year. Zek'tai's translator began smoking, not metaphorically. Actual smoke was rising from the device. And here, Bob continued, oblivious to Zek'tai's mounting psychological crisis, this is from Jenny's wedding, my granddaughter, or great-great-great. Well, there's a lot of greats in there. Math was never my strong suit. The photo showed Bob in what appeared to be formal wear, standing next to a woman who looked exactly like the Martha who'd greeted Zek'tai at the entrance, except the background showed a landscape of crystalline spires that hurt to look at directly. That's Martha from the front desk, Zek'tai whispered. Yep, she's been working here for about 15,000 years now, give or take. Great work ethic, never calls in sick. Bob smiled proudly, though she did take a century off when she had her kids. Fair's fair. A new voice interrupted Zek'tai's spiral into madness. Bob, have you been showing off the family album again? They turned to see a middle-aged man in a lab coat approaching, carrying what looked like a clipboard made of crystallized time. His name tag read, Dr. Peterson, Paleontology. Just giving our guest the tour, Pete, Bob replied. Zek'tai, meet Dr. Peterson. He runs our fossil department. Dr. Peterson extended a hand, which Zek'tai shook automatically while staring at the man's eyes. They held depths that seemed to contain the accumulated wisdom of eons, like looking into wells that had been dug through the bedrock of reality itself. Pleasure to meet you, Peterson said warmly. I hope Bob's not boring you with his war stories. You should hear him go on about the Cretaceous period, acts like he was there personally. I was there personally, Bob protested, and it wasn't a war, it was a minor disagreement about zoning laws. Peterson laughed. Right. The great dinosaur zoning dispute of 65 million BCE. How could I forget? He turned to Zek'tai with a conspiratorial whisper. Between you and me, Bob's still bitter about losing that argument to the asteroid lobby. Zek'tai made a sound that might have been laughter if laughter could be filtered through existential terror and processed by vocal cords that had temporarily forgotten how to function. Oh, Bob snapped his fingers. That reminds me. Come see what we've got in storage. Picked up some interesting pieces at an estate sale last weekend. He led them to a door marked Authorized Personnel Only, which opened to reveal what could only be described as a warehouse of impossibilities. Shelves stretched up into shadows that seemed deeper than the building should have allowed, filled with objects that made Zek'tai's eyes water just to glimpse. Let's see, Bob muttered, consulting a list written on what appeared to be fossilized tree bark. We've got Napoleon's actual hat, a complete set of Atlantis dinnerware, 3 of Shakespeare's rough drafts, and he paused, squinting at his notes. Oh yes, here we go, the crown jewels of the Ziggurat Empire. The Ziggurat Empire, Zek'tai croaked. Every schoolchild in the galaxy learned about the Ziggurat Empire in ancient galactic history class. It was the theoretical precursor civilization that supposedly built the first hyperspace lanes before mysteriously vanishing 2 million years ago. Theoretical, my foot, Bob snorted, apparently having developed telepathic abilities along with his casual relationship with linear time. Fred Ziggurat was my neighbor. Nice guy, terrible at lawn maintenance. His wife made excellent cookies though. Zek'tai sat down heavily on what he hoped was a chair and turned out to be some kind of fossilized philosophy. He was beginning to suspect that his carefully planned cultural exchange visit was not going according to plan. Bob noticed Zek'tai's glazed expression and the way the alien diplomat was gripping the fossilized philosophy like a life preserver in a storm of impossibility. With the practiced ease of someone who'd dealt with this particular brand of existential crisis before, Bob pulled up what appeared to be a director's chair made from compressed neutron star material. All right, Bob said, settling into the chair with a satisfied grunt. I can see you're having what we used to call the moment. That point where everything you thought you knew decides to pack up and move to a nice retirement community in another dimension. He reached into his cardigan pocket and pulled out a thermos that definitely hadn't been there moments before. Coffee. It helps with the brain melting. Zek'tai accepted the offered cup with trembling appendages. The liquid inside tasted like concentrated starlight mixed with hazelnut creamer. Bob, he managed, his voice barely above a whisper, what exactly are humans? Bob leaned back, considering the question with the thoughtful expression of someone trying to remember where they left their keys. Well, that's a loaded question, isn't it? I suppose the short answer is, we're old. Really stupidly, ridiculously old. How old? Zek'tai asked, though he wasn't entirely sure he wanted to know the answer. Let's put it this way, Bob said, taking a sip of coffee that seemed to contain swirling galaxies. You know that Big Bang everyone's so excited about? We were the ones running the sound system. The cup slipped from Zek'tai's nerveless fingers. It didn't hit the floor. Instead, it hovered thoughtfully for a moment before floating back up to his hand, apparently having decided that gravity was more of a suggestion than a law. You see, Bob continued, seemingly oblivious to the casual violation of physics occurring around them, humans have been kicking around this galaxy for, what's a few billion years between friends. We were here when the first stars were figuring out how fusion worked. Built the original hyperspace lanes, though back then we just called them the shortcuts. Seeded planets with life because frankly empty space gets boring after the first few million years. Zek'tai's mind reeled. But the archaeological record, the evolutionary evidence. Humans evolved on Earth from primitive primates. Bob waved a dismissive hand. Marketing department. Best PR campaign in galactic history if I do say so myself. He pulled out what looked like a smartphone, except it was clearly grown rather than manufactured and pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Here, let me show you the real timeline. The device projected a holographic display that filled the warehouse space around them. Zek'tai found himself surrounded by a three-dimensional map of galactic history that made his academic training look like finger painting. So, early days, Bob began, gesturing at swirling patterns of light. Humans spread out across the galaxy, built cities that could fold space-time like origami, created entire species just to see if we could. He pointed to a cluster of star systems, your people for instance. We were going through a let's see what happens if we give sentience to crystalline formations phase. Turned out pretty well, I think. We're artificial. Zek'tai's voice came out as a squeak. Artificial is such a harsh word. Let's call it artisanal, handcrafted with love and attention to detail. Bob's expression grew fond, though I'll admit some of the early prototypes were a bit rough around the edges. The Blovnax, for instance, who designs a species with 17 different genders and no way to remember which one they are on any given Tuesday. The holographic display shifted, showing vast human civilizations spanning multiple galaxies, technologies that could reshape matter with a thought, and achievements that dwarfed anything Zek'tai had imagined possible. But then, Bob's tone grew melancholic. We hit the big problem: success. Complete, total, overwhelming success. We'd conquered death, figured out the meaning of life, answer to the ultimate question, the whole package. Turned out the answer to everything is be excellent to each other, which was a bit anticlimactic after all that work. So what happened? Zek'tai found himself leaning forward despite his shattered worldview. Bob shrugged with cosmic weariness. We got bored. Imagine being so successful that there are literally no challenges left. We could create life, destroy stars, travel through time like it was a weekend trip to the beach. The universe became our playground, and playgrounds lose their fun when you've played on every swing set. The holographic display showed human civilization at its peak, cities that spanned star systems, beings of such power they could reshape reality with casual thoughts, technologies that made magic look pedestrian. So we made a decision, Bob continued. The Great Reset, we called it. Humanity would take a step back, go on vacation, you might say. We wiped our own historical records, scattered ourselves across countless worlds, and decided to pretend we were young again. Pretend. Zek'tai's voice was barely audible. Oh yes, the whole primitive human civilization slowly discovering space travel thing? Pure theater. We've been putting on the greatest performance in galactic history for the past few million years. Bob grinned with obvious pride. Earth isn't humanity's homeworld, it's our retirement community. A place where we can relax, garden a bit, maybe raise some dinosaurs for fun. Zek'tai stared at the impossible truth unfolding around him. But why? Why give up such power? Bob's expression grew philosophical. Have you ever tried to enjoy a sunset when you're the one controlling the star? Hard to appreciate the beauty of discovery when you already know everything. We wanted to remember what it felt like to be young, to struggle, to grow, so we became actors in our own cosmic play. The other species, the Galactic Council, the entire structure of interstellar civilization, Zek'tai trailed off. All guided by us, from behind the scenes. Not controlled, mind you, that would ruin the fun, but influenced, nudged in interesting directions, like parents watching their children learn to walk, stepping in only when someone's about to fall off a cliff. Bob stood up, his ancient eyes twinkling with amusement. The beautiful thing is, most humans don't even remember the truth consciously. We built the amnesia so thoroughly that we convinced ourselves of our own story, method acting on a species-wide scale. Zek'tai sat in stunned silence, trying to process the revelation that his entire understanding of galactic history, evolution, and the nature of reality itself had been humanity's elaborate vacation planning. So when you see humans struggling with problems, making mistakes, slowly advancing through technological development, Bob said gently, that's not incompetence, that's us remembering how to be mortal again, and honestly, it's been the most fun we've had in eons. Bob seemed to sense that Zek'tai needed a moment to let reality reassemble itself into some semblance of order. He busied himself rearranging artifacts on a nearby shelf, humming what sounded suspiciously like a song that wouldn't be written for another 1,000 years. You know, Bob said, conversationally, moving what appeared to be the original blueprint for gravity to make room for a coffee mug shaped like Saturn. The hardest part about the whole thing isn't maintaining the illusion. It's keeping a straight face when younger species get all excited about discovering things we invented during lunch breaks. Zek'tai looked up from his existential crisis. What do you mean? Bob's eyes lit up with the mischievous gleam of someone about to share their favorite prank. Oh, this is the best part. You remember when the Galactic Council made that big announcement about discovering hyperspace travel? All those ceremonies, the scientific papers, the Nobel Prizes handed out? Of course, Zek'tai replied weakly. It was considered the greatest breakthrough in galactic history. My own people contributed 17 research teams to understanding the principles. Right, Bob nodded sagely. Beautiful work, really. Your scientists were so thorough, so methodical. We were genuinely impressed by how they reverse-engineered our old highway system. He chuckled. Though I'll admit, watching them celebrate figuring out technology we built when their star was still a nebula, well, it was like watching kids get excited about discovering fire while Dad quietly tends the barbecue. Zek'tai felt something that might have been indignation stirring beneath his cosmic bewilderment. You're saying humanity has been laughing at us this entire time? Laughing? Oh no, no, no. Bob waved his hands frantically. Not laughing at you, laughing with you. There's a difference. It's like, have you ever watched a child learn to tie their shoes? You don't mock them for not knowing how. You feel proud and happy when they figure it out, even though you've known how to do it for decades. Bob pulled out what looked like a tablet made from crystallized time and began scrolling through what appeared to be an infinite list. Let me show you some of our greatest hits. Here we go. The discovery of warp drive by the Centaurian Empire 2.3 million years ago. Beautiful ceremony. Their physicist, Dr. Glorblex, was so excited he literally vibrated into another dimension for 3 days. Dr. Glorblex is a legend, Zek'tai whispered. His equations are taught in every physics program in the galaxy. Lovely fellow. We had him over for dinner once. Terrible table manners, but enthusiastic about his work. Bob scrolled further. Oh, and here's when the Silicon Collective figured out quantum computing. That was a fun one. They threw a planet-wide celebration that lasted for 6 months. The tablet displayed image after image, species across the galaxy celebrating breakthrough discoveries, receiving accolades for technologies that humanity had apparently been using since before their solar systems existed. But why? Zek'tai asked, his voice strained. Why let others take credit for your achievements? Bob set down the tablet and looked at Zek'tai with an expression of profound kindness. Because that's what parents do. You don't solve your children's homework for them. You let them struggle, learn, grow, and feel the pride of accomplishment when they succeed. The joy on their faces when they figure something out. That's worth more than any credit or recognition. We're Warsheld. We're your children. Zek'tai's voice was barely audible. In a way, yes, though children isn't quite right. You're more like young relatives we're incredibly proud of. Every species we've watched grow and develop, every breakthrough you've made, every problem you've solved on your own, it fills us with this warm feeling that makes the whole cosmic hide-and-seek game worthwhile. Bob stood and walked over to what appeared to be a window, though given the impossible architecture of the warehouse, Zek'tai couldn't be sure what it looked out onto. You see, when you've lived as long as we have, when you've seen and done everything the universe has to offer, the only real joy left is watching others experience that wonder for the first time. But Earth, Zek'tai began, trying to anchor himself to something concrete. Your historical records, your evolution, the archaeological evidence. Oh, Earth, Bob laughed. Earth isn't our homeworld. It's more like our summer cottage, a place where humans can come to remember what it's like to be young and mortal. We've got dozens of planets like this scattered across the galaxy. Zek'tai's remaining functional brain cell promptly filed for unemployment. Dozens? Well, hundreds really, maybe thousands. We tend to lose count. Bob pulled up another display on his impossible tablet. There's New Terra in the Rigel system, where humans are just discovering agriculture. Lovely pastoral setting. Then there's Terra Prime in the Vega cluster, where they're working through their industrial revolution phase. Bit smoky, but they're so excited about steam engines. The display showed planet after planet, each containing human populations at different technological levels, all blissfully unaware of their true nature. Each colony gets to experience the full journey, Bob explained with obvious pride. The struggle, the discovery, the gradual expansion into space. Some of them even discover each other and form their own little galactic confederations. It's adorable. How do you coordinate all of this without them knowing? Bob tapped his temple with one finger. Genetic memory suppression combined with localized reality alteration, plus a really good filing system. Martha handles most of the paperwork. He paused thoughtfully. Though we did have that awkward incident a few centuries back when 2 of our primitive colonies independently invented faster-than-light travel and bumped into each other. Took months to convince them it was just a coincidence. Zek'tai stared at the cosmic scope of humanity's elaborate game. And the rest of us, the other species, we're all just unknowing participants in your entertainment. Entertainment makes it sound frivolous, Bob said gently. This is love, Zek'tai. Love on a scale that spans galaxies and eons. We're not playing with you, we're playing alongside you. Every victory you achieve, every problem you solve, every moment of wonder you experience, we feel it too. And that shared joy, that vicarious pride in your accomplishments, that's what keeps us going. Bob smiled with the warmth of someone watching their favorite cosmic soap opera. Besides, who says the game ever has to end? Bob's grin widened into something that could only be described as cosmic mischief incarnate. He rubbed his hands together with the enthusiasm of someone about to reveal the punchline to a joke that had been building for geological ages. You want to know humanity's greatest achievement? Bob asked, his eyes twinkling with barely contained glee. It's not the star roads, or the reality-shaping technology, or even creating half the species in known space. No, our masterpiece is much simpler than that. Zek'tai braced himself, having learned that when Bob got excited, the laws of physics tended to get nervous and start looking for emergency exits. We convinced everyone we're the new kids on the block, Bob announced triumphantly. The entire galaxy thinks humans are barely out of diapers, cosmically speaking. Meanwhile, we've been running the show since before most stars learned how to shine properly. It's the ultimate whodunit, where everyone's looking for the mastermind, and the mastermind is standing right there asking if anyone wants more coffee. Bob gestured grandly at the museum around them. This whole place? Everyone thinks it's a quaint little collection of human artifacts, primitive tools, historical curiosities, that sort of thing. But look closer. He led Zek'tai to what appeared to be a simple display case containing what looked like a child's toy, a colorful spinning top. Elementary school project, Bob said casually. Little Susie Martinez made it for her science fair. 3rd grade, if I remember correctly. Zek'tai leaned closer, and his enhanced vision immediately detected energy patterns that defied description. The toy wasn't spinning, it was teaching space-time how to spin around it. That's a localized gravity manipulation device, Zek'tai stammered. My people have been trying to develop that technology for centuries. Susie got an A+, Bob said proudly, though her teacher did dock points for showing off. They moved to another display, a simple wooden chair that any human grandmother might have in her living room. Belonged to my great-aunt Mildred, Bob explained. She was always complaining about her back, so we made her something comfortable. Zek'tai's instruments, the few that hadn't already suffered nervous breakdowns, began detecting temporal anomalies. The chair existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, while somehow remaining a perfectly normal piece of furniture. The beautiful thing, Bob continued, is that it's all hidden in plain sight. Humans have been integrating impossible technology into everyday life for so long that we don't even notice it anymore. Your morning coffee mug that never gets cold, quantum thermal regulation, that pen that never runs out of ink, localized matter generation, the elevator that somehow fits more people than the laws of physics should allow. Don't ask, trade secret. Bob pulled out what looked like a completely ordinary smartphone and began scrolling through what appeared to be a social media feed, except the posts were from people across the galaxy, including several species that hadn't officially made contact with humanity yet. Social networking on a galactic scale, Bob explained. We've been subtly connecting species for millennia. That brilliant idea your people had about establishing the Galactic Communication Network, inspired by a human teenager who wanted to share cat videos with her friend on Alpha Centauri. Zek'tai watched as Bob liked a post from someone complaining about traffic on a planet 3 galaxies away. Wait, Zek'tai said, his mind finally catching up with the implications. If humans have been guiding galactic development, that means the Galactic Council was our idea, yes, Bob confirmed cheerfully. Though to be fair, we just suggested it. You all did the hard work of actually organizing it. We're more like cosmic consultants, very hands-off management style. Bob led him to what appeared to be a janitor's closet, but when he opened the door, it revealed a control room that would make the bridge of the most advanced starship look like a child's toy. Screens displayed real-time information from across the galaxy, tracking everything from weather patterns on distant worlds to the migration habits of space whales. This is where we keep an eye on things, Bob said, settling into a chair that was definitely not made from any known materials. Nothing invasive, mind you. Just making sure nobody accidentally blows up a star or invents something that might unravel the fabric of reality. Again, Zek'tai squeaked. The Blawbnox went through a phase, Bob said dismissively. We sorted it out, mostly. A gentle chime sounded, and one of the screens highlighted a star system in the outer rim. Bob frowned and tapped a few controls. Looks like the Zelothians are about to discover nuclear fusion. Better send someone to make sure they don't skip straight to antimatter weapons. He made a note on what appeared to be a shopping list. Maybe dress up as a traveling physicist, give them some helpful nudges toward peaceful applications. You intervene directly? Zek'tai asked. Only when absolutely necessary, Bob assured him. Mostly we just leave helpful books lying around, or arrange for the right person to have the right idea at the right time. Inspiration is surprisingly easy to trigger when you know which buttons to push. Bob turned off the displays and closed the closet door, which immediately returned to looking like a perfectly normal storage space for mops and cleaning supplies. The thing is, Bob said, his expression growing thoughtful, we could reveal the truth tomorrow, show up in our real ships, demonstrate our actual technology, take credit for everything. But what would be the fun in that? The greatest joke isn't the one where you reveal the punchline. It's the one where everyone's in on it without knowing they're in on it. Zek'tai looked around the museum with new eyes, seeing not a collection of human artifacts but a carefully curated exhibition of the galaxy's most advanced civilization, pretending to be exactly what everyone expected them to be. So this museum, he began. Storage facility for our old junk, Bob confirmed with a grin. Though old junk to us tends to be impossible artifacts that challenge the fundamental understanding of reality to everyone else. Zek'tai stood in the middle of the museum, surrounded by humanity's old junk, and felt his sanity pack its bags and head for the nearest exit. His 4 eyes blinked in rapid sequence as his brain attempted to process the cosmic joke that was apparently his entire existence. He began, then stopped. Another pause. Everything I know is wrong, incomplete, a carefully orchestrated performance designed to let you experience the joy of discovery while never realizing you're being lovingly guided by cosmic grandparents. Bob suggested helpfully, yeah, that about covers it. Zek'tai's legs gave out, and he sat down heavily on what he now realized was probably some kind of crystallized philosophy again. His breathing apparatus made distressed beeping sounds that harmonized poorly with the existential ringing in his ears. The Andromedan Trade Collective, he whispered, staring at his own hands as if seeing them for the first time. Our proud history, our achievements, our entire civilization. Oh, don't sell yourselves short, Bob said, settling into his impossible chair and pulling out a thermos that definitely contained more liquid than its exterior dimensions should have allowed. You've accomplished wonderful things. Sure, we may have given you the initial spark, but everything you've built since then, that's all you. Bob poured tea into 2 cups that materialized from thin air, offering one to Zek'tai. The liquid inside swirled with colors that hadn't been invented yet, and tasted like liquid comfort mixed with existential acceptance. Think of it this way, Bob continued, pulling out a plate of cookies that smelled like childhood memories and warm sunlight. If I give you a box of art supplies, and you paint a masterpiece, who's the artist? You are. The supplies just made it possible. Zek'tai took a cookie automatically. It tasted like his grandmother's baking, which was impossible since his species didn't have grandmothers in the traditional sense, and had never developed baking as a cultural practice. But we're artificial, Zek'tai said, his voice hollow, created, designed. So is this cookie, Bob pointed out. Doesn't make it any less delicious, does it? Besides, artificial suggests something fake or lesser. You're handcrafted, artisanal, made with love and attention to detail, premium quality sentient life, if you will. Bob munched thoughtfully on his own cookie, which appeared to contain chocolate chips that were actually tiny stars. You know what your people's specialty was during the design phase? Problem solving through creative interpretation of natural laws. We'd present you with what seemed like an impossible situation, and you'd find the most elegantly unexpected solution. Like what? Zek'tai asked, despite himself. Well, take your crystalline physiology, Bob said, gesturing at Zek'tai's translucent, multifaceted form. Most species would see silicon-based life as limiting, rigid. But you turned it into living art. Your cities grow like songs made visible, your mathematics is based on harmonic resonance, and your poetry literally rings like crystal bells. Beautiful work, really. Zek'tai looked down at his hands again, this time with something approaching wonder. We are rather musical, aren't we? Absolutely. And that diplomatic corps you're part of? Your ability to find common ground between wildly different species? That's not programmed behavior, that's learned wisdom. Sure, we may have given you the initial inclination toward harmony, but the skills, the experience, the genuine compassion you show, that's earned. Bob leaned forward conspiratorially. Besides, between you and me, some of our other art projects didn't turn out nearly as well. The Blobniks, for instance. We were going for charmingly chaotic, but they somehow interpreted that as randomly explode at inappropriate moments. Still working on that one. Zek'tai found himself actually smiling, a crystal chime of amusement escaping his vocal apparatus. So what happens now? Do I report back to the Galactic Council, tell them everything? Bob shrugged with cosmic indifference. Up to you. Though I should mention, we've had this conversation with representatives from most major species over the years. Some choose to remember, some choose to forget, some file it under classified until further notice, and go on with their lives. And humanity. Will you ever reveal the truth officially? Maybe someday, Bob said thoughtfully, when everyone's ready for it, when the joke's run its course and it's time for the next chapter. But honestly, we're having too much fun watching everyone grow and discover things to spoil it just yet. Bob finished his tea and stood up, brushing cookie crumbs off his cardigan. Though, speaking of spoiling things, he grinned with the expression of someone about to make a situation infinitely more complicated. Would you like to see the really old stuff? We keep it in the basement. Zek'tai looked at Bob, then at the impossible museum around him, then at his own crystalline hands that were apparently the result of cosmic artisanship spanning eons. He thought about his people, their proud history, their achievements, and their place in a galaxy that was far stranger and more wonderful than he'd ever imagined. You know what, Bob? Zek'tai said, standing up with renewed determination. I think I would. After all, if you're going to have your entire worldview destroyed and rebuilt, you might as well see how deep the rabbit hole really goes. Besides, the cookies were excellent.